Peter Kujawa. I love talking to Peter. I have known him for a while now. He is the director. He's in charge of Service Leadership Index. It's a report that gets put out once a quarter. It's much more than a report. It's all managed service provider data that gets put in by the MSPs. ConnectWise, that owns Service Leadership now, makes one large umbrella called the Technology Service Providers, TSP, under of which MSPs are under, other like VARs are under that as well. But we go into it. Peter's very interesting man, very wonderful background. By the way, he's an attorney. I asked him, I open up, what's the difference between an attorney and a lawyer? Not sure if you know the answer there. So he ran multiple businesses, did very well, got drafted to take over an MSP that needed to be turned around. It was losing $1 million a year. What he did there, how SLI helped him, before he even took it over. Fascinating discussion on where the managed service provider market is now. There's been no greater time. It's 4 straight years in a row of growth, 20% plus EBITDA profitability in MSPs. We talk about M&A, we talk about AI, hyper efficiency, and my goodness, hyper automation, and how AI is improving. But it's a great discussion with Peter. Really, always enjoy talking to Peter. It's a great conversation. Thanks for listening. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz. People ask me, how did I lose 130 pounds? The quick answer is always discipline. I started my business, wasn't paying attention to my health, was eating too much, drinking too much sweets. My daughter was born. Next thing I know, I'm pre-diabetic, I have hypertension. I knew something had to change. Discipline. I, like many of you, have faced many challenges in your career, in your family, in your life, in your faith. How did you attack them? How did you approach them? How did you solve them, hopefully? It all had to have some degree of discipline. I'm also asked, how did you found and start a tech business that lasted over 25 years? Discipline. I was committed to it, enjoyed technology, didn't enjoy some aspects of it, but knew it was necessary. Discipline. Our podcast mission, how do we use discipline to better ourselves and society? Join me, please, as I talk to interesting people and discuss how they use discipline in their family and their passion and their careers and how it helped them. Our podcast vision, growth through learning from others. Joey Pinz Disciple Conversations. It'll be light and serious. Join us, please. Thank you for consideration. Peter Kujawa, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. Peter, what's the difference between an attorney and a lawyer?
Nothing really. I guess, I can't think of a distinction. Maybe an unofficial distinction would be one is licensed but not practicing actively. The other one, like me, the other one is actively practicing and doing law stuff all day. There's an interesting statistic. 50% of licensed attorneys in the U.S. Who have been licensed for 10 years or more are not actively practicing law. They're doing something else. They're running businesses and
politicians,
all sorts of other stuff. Yeah. So
I thought it was one passed the bar, the other didn't.
I've never heard that, but it's possible.
In order to practice, you have to pass the bar, correct?
I don't know. Yeah, correct.
Yep. Yeah. Very interesting. But just to kind of understand just how the laws work is a great endeavor.
Yeah, no, it's a great toolkit. I get asked about it a lot. Like, what are you doing talking about MSP profitability when you're a licensed attorney? And that's a long answer. There's a long answer to that question, but the short answer is it's a great toolkit for whatever you decide to do.
Yeah, it gives you a lot of flexibility.
It does, yeah. Yeah, it's, if you go to medical school and get a medical degree, it's going to open up things that are medically related, I guess. But if you don't want to actually be a doctor, but if you get a law degree, there's all sorts of areas you can get into.
So you told me your story. To refresh my memory, please. So you're running a business, but then you got assigned to run an MSP.
Not exactly. So I was out. I went to undergrad at Marquette, graduated in 1992, and toyed with going to law school. But I paid my way through undergrad and was leveraged to the hilt,
Mm.
and so I didn't have that option. So I decided to go out and make some money for a while and see where life would take me. And I ended up in the cell phone industry during the days when cell phones were 1500 and airtime was a quarter a minute and that kind of thing.
Mm.
And so was doing a lot of business to business sales in that industry, got into management pretty quickly. And it was great to me. I really enjoyed it. Had been doing it for 6 years, was up in Green Bay, Wisconsin, running sales for Northeast Wisconsin, and had just been married. And a year earlier, thing life was good. And in 1998, decided to go back to law school. And Marquette at the time had a part-time program that was 4 nights a week. So I ran U.S. Cellular's major account team 4 day or 5 days a week, and at night 4 nights a week I went to law
Wow.
school from 5:30 to
Wow.
9.
Wow.
And so I stayed active, leading in a business environment, running sales teams, and graduated in 2002 and had worked at a couple of law firms, um, and it was fine. But two things happened. One was September 11th hit, and when it did, law firms pulled back on their associate offers, so the legal market became really tight for a couple of
Hmm.
years. The second thing was the experience of working at law firms made me realize I liked running a business a whole lot better than working at a law firm.
Mm.
And so it was fine. I enjoyed it. It was interesting work and everything. I think had I stayed, had September 11th not hit, that's probably the route I would have gone.
Wow.
But ended up a couple. It's a long story, but a year later, ended up running a regulated business for an attorney up in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, and it was a financial technology firm that was more of a startup, and we grew it like crazy. It was really, really profitable. We grew it from 3 or 4 banks that were customers in Wisconsin to about 250 nationwide, and had been there 7 years and liked it. But in 2010, the opportunity for my wife and I to move back to La Crosse, Wisconsin, popped up, and that's where we had met. She went to school here, and we loved the area and had wanted to get back here. And there was an owner of an MSP who knew a friend of mine, and my friend knew that the MSP was really struggling and needed. He was looking for a new leader to come in, and so I ended up in June of 2010 coming in to run the MSP that I ran in La Crosse, and it was a turnaround. To put it mildly,
Hmm.
2.2 million of revenue and losing $1.5 million a year.
Mm.
But that's what got me into the managed service business. So nothing to do with IT, nothing to do with having worked in technology other than the fintech side of things. My area of expertise was running businesses and turnarounds and growth and that kind of thing.
Talk to me about turning around that MSP with that loss. I remember you telling me it took, if I'm not mistaken, like a couple years. Like, is it just an expense cutting endeavor? What I mean, it's what is that process like, Peter?
Well, from just like it is for most businesses, it's a lot of littles more than it is any one thing.
Mm.
Um, so in our case, we definitely had some expenses that were out of whack. We had way too many salespeople. We had some salespeople who hadn't sold anything in 5 or 6 months, and so I'm convinced that if you're a salesperson who's putting in any effort at all, even if you don't know your products, if you just walk into enough offices during the course of the day, you're going to walk out with a couple of orders over the
Mm.
months. But
Mm.
we definitely had some expense issues there. We had a lot of quality of service issues that we had to fix. And in my first month there, we were fired by our largest client and put on notice by our second largest client. So definitely a sense of urgency. I had one of my previous bosses that I worked for had a saying that came up during the Great Recession that I've said a lot of times when I've been speaking, but I love it. And that is, a hangman's noose sharpens the mind and leads to rapid decision making.
Hmm.
And so we had to make a bunch of decisions, and quickly found out who was really committed. Quickly found out who really had the right stuff as leaders in the organization, and a bunch of that team is still there today. In fact, one of the guys who was running sales for me, who I ended up promoting to a sales manager after about 6 months, after we made some leadership changes, he took over as president for me after I left in 2021.
Wow.
So those situations they're not fun. You have to go through a lot of difficult decisions. One of the most important things we did was about a month and a half or 2 months in. um, we were overpaying on healthcare. We had a Cadillac plan, and when you're a business that's facing potential insolvency, it's really nice to provide a top level benefit plan that has no deductible,
Whoa.
and has no premium cost, or minimal deductible and no premium, and that kind of thing. And your employees love it. Um, but if your business is going to go under, that makes no sense to do.
Mm,
And
mm.
so we had to make some rapid changes on a bunch of expenses. And while we were also really trying to grow our way out of it on the positive side, um, when we did those things, one of the things that we did was, I'm a very transparent leader, and I'm a big believer that your people, if they really, first of all, your employees always know more than you think they know.
Mm.
Um, but second of all, really bringing them into the fold and helping them be part of the change and the improvement is part of what drives the success of every organization. And so we called a meeting, and I went through, brought out the Excel and showed them the situation, showed them that while we had been adding a lot of customers, that we were not making money on them, and we were spending too much money, and we needed to make some rapid changes in the business. And that if we did, and here's the path to us being successful. And here's the timeline, and here's why we think why we're going to be okay. Don't This is not a cause for you to think we're going out of business. It's the opposite. If we don't fix these things, we will go out of business. And so we spent about an hour and a half, and up until then, a lot of the employees had only been told the good news, that we're adding customers, we're growing, we're doing great. And I had an employee after that. I definitely had a couple of employees that left over the next few weeks because they didn't like the direction, or they were afraid of their jobs. But most employees really dug in and appreciated it and helped us turn it around. One of the employees came up to me afterwards and into my office and said, "Peter, I've never had anybody show me how we're really doing. And thank
Mm.
you." And so I think that a lot of those things helped us. Ultimately, we were doing better, but about 6 to 9 months in, we still were really struggling on, especially on gross margin. And my sales reps were really, really convincing to me that we couldn't make money on hardware. That the best case scenario on hardware and software was 13% gross margin, because of Dell and other online competitors that we would get shopped out against. And this was crazy to me. I came from a business that was way, way higher than that, and I couldn't understand it. But ultimately, I accepted it. I didn't come from the IT world, and they were right. Competitor, or you could go and compare prices, and um, so but after about 6 or 9 months, I was introduced to Paul Dipple and service leadership and benchmarking, and we started to benchmark. And I remember going to our first peer group meeting, which we also joined, getting our first benchmarking report back and seeing the best in class getting 23% on gross margin,
Huh.
and we were only getting 13. And we also were way out of whack on what we were spending on sales and G&A, and we were way out of whack. We were not getting enough gross margin on service. But the easy one to me was, we went back and said, "Hey guys, what is this? How are they able to? Everybody else is able to do this, and we're down here."
Yeah.
And we're setting our minimum target at 23% going forward. And we had maybe one customer that pushed back on it. We were within a quarter, we were above best in class on product.
Wow.
And at that point, we were doing $1 million a year of product. That was $100,000 swing to the bottom line. So I'm a massive believer in the power of service leadership and in the power of peer groups. For us, that was all part of the recipe of what turned the business around.
Peer groups changed my businesses as well, Peter. But I didn't realize it was interesting that you were in Paul Dipple's SLI actually peer group, and you were exposed to SLI at that point. That's fascinating. That helped you turn it around.
Oh yeah, we were actually a peer group member for 9 years,
Hmm.
and we were still were when I left. I can't comment on who's in our peer groups today, but that company may or may not still be in a peer group with us. So we, for me, it was transformational, and beyond just the numbers, it's understanding how we should be doing things. What should our go to market be? And
Hmm.
it's really critical today, as the market continues to evolve forward with AI and hyper automation. But it was really critical 10, 12 years ago too, when we were all just trying to figure out the model of success for managed services. Um, you remember it was the Wild West, Joe. It was
Sure was.
you'd have some people saying you should do all you can eat, others saying you should do
Hmm.
that, you're crazy if you do that, and customers will crush you, and you'd be better off to do block hours with some
Yeah.
service built
Yeah.
in,
Yeah.
and who knows what we should charge. And it was a crazy time. I mean, we were all inventing this phase in the industry. So being in a peer group and being able to hear what's working and being able to get the advice from service leadership personnel on what they're seeing in the numbers and what you should be doing was invaluable to us. An unbelievable part of our growth journey.
So Service Leader Index, 19 years old, 103 countries. What's the goal? You are now director of, you're in charge of it. What is your,
I run the business unit. So ConnectWise bought service leadership at the
right.
very end of 2020, beginning of 2021. And I was brought in October of 21 to run service leadership as a business unit. So we're kind of a unique business unit within ConnectWise in that our EULA and our expectation from our members is that our data be completely separate.
Huh.
And so it continues to this day that service leadership's data, our partner data, is only visible to service leadership team members and
Hmm.
a very limited number of ConnectWise employees, primarily developers who are under individual NDA to be able to have access to it. So so we still are not only run as a business unit by name, but we really are from a standpoint of data separation and some other aspects. But we interface really closely with the ConnectWise team, particularly with the IT Nation team. We provide a lot of content, as you know. We are in the Evolve peer groups every quarter, talking to individual rooms. These service leadership peer groups are now under the Evolve org, so we continue to provide content there. But those groups are logistically run by IT Nation, so definitely there's a close integration of the businesses, but we're still maintaining a degree of separation in many areas. So to answer your question in a long way, I run that part of the business unit.
Yeah, you mentioned EULA, the end user license agreement, and it's very interesting because keeping that data separate, because yeah, ConnectWise obviously is in the business of serving MSPs. So it's very interesting that that data needs to be separate. And when it was acquired, when ConnectWise acquired it, everybody was concerned about, oh, what are they going to do with this data? But it's interesting how you do separate it that way.
Yeah, I had a partner in a peer groups a year and a half or so ago say something to the effect of, look, I know at some point I'm going to start getting a call. If I have a good quarter, I'm going to get a call from a
Ha!
sales rep saying that they have something to sell me. And I'm like, no, you're not. There's no zero visibility that the greater sales org has to your profitability data. But I get it. I mean, you're putting in some of your most confidential information into our system, and there's a very high degree of concern that that confidentiality be maintained, and it is. It's ConnectWise corporately has taken that very seriously. They've respected the arrangement that we have. Um, the positive, what does flow back to ConnectWise from us is a lot of guidance on what partners really are doing today and
Mm,
what good looks like for partners and what are the optimal ways that we should be designing our products to help the partners deliver best in class results to their companies that they're taking care of. So the advantage to ConnectWise of having us as part of the org is really a couple of fold. One is it helps us through, particularly through the peer groups, but not even just through the peer groups. It helps us really improve the results of the MSP community.
mm,
And it's not just MSPs. We actually benchmark 10 different business models, including MSPs, but VARs and other forms of infrastructure provider, application developers, etc. So all of those are able to improve because of the work that service leadership does. And at the end of the day, that's why ConnectWise owns IT Nation and has the peer groups and has made the millions of dollars of investment in that community, is to help improve the overall community's results. Hopefully, they're ConnectWise clients, but even if they're not, it's good for all of us if the community is doing well and is delivering better quality results to customers. If the community is not doing well or not delivering good results to customers out in the marketplace, it's gonna really hurt the reputation of the outsourcing model to be
mm.
entirely. So ConnectWise, I think, is really smart and gets that, and has been very altruistic with support of IT Nation and the peer groups and now service leadership. But the other advantage for ConnectWise is that now they have this knowledge base inside of the org that can help uh, point the company in the right direction for some of these decisions about how to do things in a really partner centric way, and what are the ways, if we're designing products and as we're approaching hyper automation and some of these other initiatives, what are the things that really matter that we need to make sure that we're keeping an eye on in terms of partner profitability and success.
Yeah, I can remember talking more about the separation of data when I was in the peer group. It used to be HTG, now it's Evolve. We would get the SLI report for our immediate group, and it wouldn't even have the company name. It would be like the town, I believe,
Right,
or
the alias.
there was always aliases, and you could choose whatever alias you'd like. So it was really really well maintained. So let's talk about, the report has been published, and some of the acronyms that are used throughout that we want to go over. Now, ConnectWise uses the term TSP, Technology Service Provider, versus MSP. Is that because of the PBM, the predominant business model? There's about 10 of them, and you just kind of lump them into something called a TSP?
Yes, TSP would be the broader term for multiple different technology service providers. We historically refer to them as solution providers. ConnectWise uses TSP, so that's the term you see in the report now. But the predominant business model, PBM, that's a service leadership definition that's based on your revenue mix. So we look at, for example, if your revenue is 60% or more product, your PBM in our model is going to be product centric or VAR. If you have at least 40% services revenue, then we're going to look at is the revenue from infrastructure services or app
Uh,
services, and which one is dominant. And then within those, is it managed services? Is it project services? Is it break fix or technical services? And based on that classification, whatever dominates within that, we're going to assign you to one of the PBMs that we've got. So these are umbrella terms that are designed to reflect the fact that there isn't just managed service providers as a model anymore. There's a bunch of different models out there. And so we want to make sure that we're benchmarking them correctly so that when we're comparing data and looking at best in class comparisons, that you're really comparing yourself to other like organizations. For example, the average VAR, best in class service gross margin, is going to be about 42%, best in class service gross margin for MSPs is going to be about 51%.
Huh.
And so the business models are just a little bit different in terms of what drives success. So we want to make sure that if you're a VAR, that you're compared to other VARs. If you're an MSP, you're compared to
Mm.
other MSPs, etc.
I mean, generally speaking, does this still hold true, Peter? About for a managed service provider, an MSP, about 75% is recurring, 10 to 15 product, and 10 to 15 projects.
For the average MSP, if you're looking at true recurring revenue, and that would be for us historically managed service revenue and shared services, which is hosting on your own cloud, that
Mm.
number would be lower. It would be ideally somewhere around or normally around 60%. You're typically going to see somewhere around 20 to 25% product,
Mm.
about 20%, 15 to 20% professional services, and the rest is going to be managed services for most MSPs. But within the product, it's going to include recurring and non-recurring products. So you're going to have non-recurring product, your traditional
Ah.
hardware, but recurring product would be your cloud, your licensing, your 365, etc.
Operational maturity level, OML is a very important part of SLI.
Yes, it is. We actually trademarked the term 11 years ago. So every time somebody uses the term OML or operational maturity level, I get a check for 9 cents. No,
Nice.
just kidding. We uh, we did. I'm serious about the trademark though. Service
Of
leadership
course.
coined the term and trademarked it 11 years ago. And what OML speaks to is how's the execution of the business? How well run is the business? What's their ability to execute a business plan? And are they doing the right things right? So, the way that it ties into benchmarking is benchmarking tells you how you're doing. Operational maturity level measures the things that drive improvement and helps to really teach you how to improve to get better results. So the analogy I use often is if I go to the doctor for a physical, in the morning I go in and get my blood work done, and first part of the physical is you're within the range on your good cholesterol. You need to improve here. You're a little out of the range. You need to drop 20, 25 pounds. You're out of your range here for your age, etc. Right. Um, but if I leave the doctor's office and I don't make any fundamental changes to what I'm eating, my exercise, etc., a year from now, I'm going to go in and the results are going to be largely the same.
Hmm.
So what benchmarking does is really provide you with those ranges. Our system Service Leadership Index provides you how you're doing it relative to the best in class in over 25 in over 80 different KPIs. Best in class is top 25% most profitable companies every quarter. So we're going to compare you to over 80 different KPIs and show you how you're doing. But just like the physical, if you don't make fundamental changes in your business, a year
Mm.
from now, you're going to look exactly the same. So operational maturity level and the tool that evaluates and helps you improve it is called Sleek, which is SLIQ. That's designed to really help you improve your results and do things fundamentally different in the business.
Another term I had to get used to because many MSPs don't pay them, the owners don't pay themselves, fair market is adjusted EBITDA. Very
Yes,
important concept here.
yes, it is. Um, when uh, our highest area of feedback that we hear from MSPs when we go into the peer group rooms is pushback on adjusted EBITDA.
Really?
Uh, yes, I've said if the service leadership has a greatest hits of feedback items in the peer group rooms, adjusted EBITDA will be numbers one, two, and three on the greatest hits.
Wow.
Um, yeah, and the reason why the owners are really passionate about it is the EBITDA number shows one thing, but oftentimes adjusted EBITDA is going to be less. It's going to be less of a positive story. And the reason is because, as you said, a lot of MSP owners, about 80% or so,
Wow.
the owners underpay themselves as CEOs, and their salary and bonuses are under market, and then they pull balance sheet distributions to make up the gap. Certainly valid reasons to do that, and there's tax strategies around that, etc. But if you don't pay yourself a market wage as a CEO, you're going to provide the impression that your MSP is more profitable than it really is.
Mm.
And the argument back is, well, no, that's what it really is. Well, the problem with that is you're being compared in our benchmarking to other MSPs that are not owner led.
Right.
And so
Hmm.
the adjustment that we make, there's only one adjustment that we make in service leadership, and that is we market adjust for owner compensation. We have a table that looks at what's the size of the MSP. So is it 1 million, 5 million of revenue, 25 million of revenue, whatever. And based on the size of the business, we're going to look at if the owner won the lottery or was hit by a bus or whatever you want to use. If the owner was not there tomorrow, what would that MSP have to pay to hire uh, a CEO who had enough skill to run the business at that size?
Hmm.
So, if the owner, for example, if the owner's paying themselves $100,000 wage, and our table says that it would cost 250,000 to hire a CEO to run their business, they're going to show EBITDA, and then their adjusted EBITDA is going to be 150,000 less because of the adjustment that we're going to do
Mm.
to right size compensation. So, so again, it creates some passionate debates, but at the end of the day, what it does is really allow us to do apples to apples comparison and determine who really is the best in class, who really is doing the top 25% best profitability, and not get
Hmm.
into the financial engineering or any of those kind of things.
A record fourth year in a row of 20% plus EBITDA profitability, total revenue growth.
Um, yeah, a couple of things mixed in that. Fourth year in a row of really awesome performance for the industry.
Mm.
Best in class, running 4 years in a row at record or near record levels, well above 2017, 18, 19. And so really crazy. I mean,
Mm.
uh, Joe, remember the early days of COVID, um, the fear that was in the industry, and
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
of us wondering, would we have jobs? Will there be an economy that even needs MSPs or TSPs? To think now and look back and say that was the early days of this really great 4 year run.
Mm.
It's hard to get your head around, but it has been. This is the best time ever for the industry. I talked, as we mentioned, we go into a lot of peer groups every quarter. I probably am in front of 250 to 300 TSPs in person every quarter. And one of the things that we talk about a lot is I hear from guys who men or women who are running their business, and every quarter they're still toying with, well, I know we need to do better. We're losing money or we're barely making money, but we'll get to it.
Mm.
And my answer is, if you're not going to make money now,
Mm.
when are you going to
Mm.
make it?
Mm.
This is the
Mm.
best time ever. The industry has never been at a better customer acceptance curve. The model of profitability is well known. And the economy, as of today, knock on wood, the economy is still humming along. And all of that could change tomorrow. So you got to be focusing in on making money, because the opportunity to make money has never been better.
Mm. And how is AI and hyper automation impacting the industry?
Well, it's really starting to. We're keeping a close eye on it. We have a whole special section in our annual
Mm.
profitability report, as you saw. and talking about some best practices. You don't want to try to boil the ocean as you're building out RPA functionality and implementing tools like Sidekick into your business. Make sure that you've really gone through and effectively done the process, and you're measuring that it's working before you go on to the next thing that you're going to try to do. A lot of MSPs, particularly smaller ones, get really excited about all this opportunity and try to boil the ocean. And so we have a methodology to implement some of these best practices into your business. Um, but what it's going to do is the initial wave of it over the first couple of years is going to really make level one techs much more efficient.
Hmm.
So what we should see in a couple of years is we should see service multiple of wages, which is one of our most important KPIs. We should see that really improving for the best in class. Today, best in class service multiple of wages is about a 2.9. And that calculation is for every dollar of service wages, you should be generating X dollars of service revenue. And we've always taught 2.5 at a minimum, and that's still a good minimum target for an MSP to have. But today, the best in class, as they've continued to improve efficiency, they're up to 2.9. I think in a couple of years, that's going to be, I don't know, three and a quarter, 3.4, maybe
Wow.
3.5. Bottom quartile will still be low because they'll figure out a way to not be efficient and not be profitable, and have a bunch of excuses as to why not. But the best in class, they're going to continue to push that up. I think even the median will see that going up. So the opportunity for every TSP is out there.
Hmm.
If I'm running an MSP today, I'm going to first focus in on my own business and make sure that I've got somebody who owns this and is really driving this in my business, um, and that we're getting the results. I'm going to be measuring to make sure that and have some KPIs targeting the improvement in efficiency. But it's also don't lose sight of the needs that your customers will have. I think this will create a tremendous project opportunity for MSPs. And it's also going to end up, I think, being something added into most managed service offerings over the next few years. Um, think back, Joe, to Teams. There was a time when Teams was this new thing, and we were all trying to figure it out, and most MSPs weren't supporting it. And it was an add on project thing, and today, obviously, every MSP supports Teams. So
Hmm.
I think you're going to start to see some similar things being added into managed service offerings over the next couple of years.
And Peter, something with, I don't know, I don't want to say equivalent impact, but a huge impact, and certainly in the last couple of years with MSPs has been M&A, the introduction of PE, and I hear MSPs for the first time ever using language like bottom number multiplier, and these great. It's great to hear like these tech people use these terms like we're too tool heavy. It's my suggestion that every MSP is overtooled, by the way, and to consolidate them down and to use it. I mean, it's a great thing, but there's also some negative things. But M&A has really turned things around for this industry and almost validated it.
Oh, it's been tremendous. Y- you don't have to sell to private equity if you don't want to. The choice is out there. But what private equity has brought to the market is a couple of things. One is valuations are continue to be really high, and the last few years they've been at record highs. And second is they've brought liquidity.
Hmm.
So if I own an MSP, whether I'm a smaller MSP or a larger MSP, I now have options that 10 years ago I wouldn't have had these same options to sell my business. Not to say I couldn't have sold it 10 years ago, but today it's much easier to go out and put your business for sale and be able to get a
Hmm.
valuation and really understand what those valuations are and how to improve them, and maybe focus in over the next few years to take it to a level that you need it to be at to retire, or to go to your next liquidity event or whatever. Um, so the amount of private equity money that has come into the space, and by the way, continues to come into the
Mm.
space,
No
um,
slowdown.
has
Yeah.
been, I think, an extraordinarily healthy thing for the industry.
Mm.
Yeah, and it has brought a lot of change. I remember one of the peer groups that I used to be in, that I remember years ago, all of us just trying to get our businesses going and make enough money to put food on the table and put the kids through college and that kind of thing. I went to that same peer group meeting about a year ago, and a couple of the guys in that meeting over dinner were comparing their Rolexes, and they
Jeez.
were showing pictures of the cars that they had bought, the exotic cars, and so seeing that kind of stuff is really fun. It's great knowing that whatever you want to do with your wealth that you create as an owner, that you're going to have options to do that, and that might be philanthropic. It might be something with your family, legacy planning, and it might be some fun stuff like those guys were doing, or
Mm.
maybe a mix of all the above. But it's a huge change from where the industry was 10, 12 years ago, that's for sure.
How should MSPs capitalize and get the most out of Service Leadership Index? How should they use it, and how can it make their business better?
Well, there's a few ways that you can benchmark with us. ConnectWise has done a really great job of making our products more affordable. Not that they weren't before, but today I can purchase a service leadership profitability bundle that's going to include benchmarking, sleek, and it's going to include our two annual reports on compensation and profitability for $4.99 a month US, which is
Wow.
about 70 to 80% under what we would have sold all of that at individually a couple of years ago.
Mm.
So it's really affordable now for every size of MSP. You can also get benchmarking and Sleek through one of the BMS bundles through ConnectWise. So if you have PSA and some other products, so ConnectWise has done a really good job of building the value and making them affordable. If you start out in benchmark, we're going to help you get started. We're going to help you map out your chart of accounts appropriately so that you're in what we call the normalized solution provider chart of accounts, the NSP COA. And that makes sure that everybody's booking their revenue and expenses the same way. So we help with that. We help the partner get up and running with it, and we also help kicking off Sleek and getting going on that. So nobody should be afraid of getting going. To me,
Mm.
any MSP that's at least 6, 7, 8 employees will have the financial sophistication, and they'll be at a size where they have a real business. They need to be getting serious about how they're running it and measuring it. So anybody who's at least that size or larger should be benchmarking today. Um, Ideally, you join a peer group. If you join an evolve or service leadership peer group, you're going to 100% of the members benchmark, 100% of the members use Sleek, and we're involved in those meetings and from a methodology standpoint. So to me, that's the best way. If you can carve out a couple of days every quarter to go to a meeting, not only are you going to benchmark and get the benefit of all that, but the accountability that you're going to get, the additional coaching from both your facilitator and from the other members, and just the school of hard knocks that you tend to have in those
Mm.
rooms.
Mm.
Um, it's really worth it. Plus the relationships you build, and there's so many benefits to everybody for that. So ideally, join a peer group, but at a minimum, start to benchmark. And if you do that, um, listen to what the data is telling you and listen to what the OML feedback is telling you.
Mm.
The data is the data. You can choose to deny where
Mm.
you are. You can choose to make excuses for it. Um, Joe, I don't know if you saw, but one of the slides we had in our annual report this year showed profitability based on size of revenue. There's a chart in the MSP section, and we added that chart this year, and we also show profitability by geographic region. So we
Mm.
show Europe and Australia, New Zealand, North America. Um, but the reason we did the one by size is there's a lot of ways that you can lie to yourself when you get the data,
Mm.
right? You can say, well, I have to pay my employees more because of X, Y, and Z, or I can't charge enough because of X, Y, and Z, or whatever. Right? There's a lot of ways to lie to yourself to make yourself sleep better at night when you get the data. But the data is the data.
Hmm.
And what it shows is that at every size range, there's best in class. At least 22% of the MSPs in that size range are best in class. Sub 1 million, 1 to 3 million, 3 to 6, 6 to 10, 10 to 15, 15 to 25, 25 to 50, and greater than 50 million. Every size can be best in class.
Hmm.
And we put that in there because
Hmm.
the greatest lie that we hear MSP owners tell themselves
Yeah.
to sleep better at night is I'm the wrong size. That
Huh.
I am only a million of revenue. When I become 3 million or 5 million, or whatever the number happens to be, then I will be able to be best in class.
Ah.
Um, we hear from the big guys that I have too much overhead, I have too much sales expense, and or I have to kick too much up upstairs. I
Hmm.
can't be best in class. I hear from the little guys that I don't have a sales team. I can't scale fast enough. I don't have the efficiencies that you get from being really big. Um, whatever
Wow.
the size somebody is who is not best in class seems to be the wrong size to be.
Huh.
And so my best advice, again, join a peer group, but my other best advice is trust what the data is telling you.
Hmm.
The data is the data.
Hmm. Yeah, it certainly is. That's really well put, Peter. I remember hearing those same excuses when I was in the peer groups. Yeah, I mean, I have to have this many people to service everyone, even though I'm under a million, and I don't have sales because I don't have. Yeah, it's fascinating. It still holds true to this day.
Yeah, the biggest thing that changes it, performance is the owner or CEO or president saying, I'm sick of this,
Hmm.
right? I've been looking at this data for the last few quarters or years or however long. And why aren't we in that best in class? Why aren't we doing
Yeah.
better? We're going to fix it. We had an extraordinary case of this in one of the peer groups
Hmm.
that we were in last quarter. So we're in the Q2 meeting, and the improvement data for this one partner from Q3 of last year to through Q1 was unbelievable. I think they went from 13 or 14% adjusted EBITDA up to 21 or 22.
Wow.
It was crazy high. And sometimes you'll see that because somebody will do some financial wizardry and move some things around, and you won't see it last. So we really dove into it with this partner, and the partner said, we came to our peer group meeting in November. We looked at our Q3 results. We looked at everybody else in the group, and we looked at best in class. We went back from that meeting and said, we're going to fix this.
Hmm.
And we spent the rest of November and all of December going through every employee,
Wow.
looking at, we had a bunch of employees that weren't really getting it done, but we allowed them to stay on with us. We got rid of those employees. So we went leaner. We looked at every expense we had in the business from top to bottom, all of our G&A expenses, everything that we were spending to deliver services.
Hmm.
We looked at every single customer's profitability. And by the end of December, we had made all of these changes in the business. We woke up in January, and in January, in Q1, we were way more profitable. And he said, Peter, the crazy thing, it was also a lot easier to run the business. We had less things we were
Hmm.
spending money on. We had a bunch of employees we were having to manage who were a challenge for us that were no longer there. And he said, it was a matter of us just really digging in and being sick of where we were. And so those guys, I'm confident next quarter and the quarter after that, they're going to be best in class then too. They'll be probably even higher than they are today. So we see that a lot. Ultimately, it's are are you willing to do what needs to be done? Are you willing to make some tough decisions and move the business forward?
Yeah, you gotta kinda have that, yeah, smack in the face, I don't know, come to Jesus, whatever you wanna call it, something dramatic's gotta happen, and then you make that turn, which so I started we'll call it an MSP, but back in 1993, we were just doing kinda network support and programming, which translates into PBMs of application development and, managed services, but I was working way too hard in the beginning, doing everything myself, doing sales, the struggle of these
Every startup.
starting
Yeah, it's tough.
every startup, 14, 16-hour days. So I was working way too hard and neglecting myself and, eating pizza and drinking too much soda. Before you know it, I got myself up to 340 pounds. Right. So the doctor said to me, if I don't lose the weight, I'm not going to see my daughter graduate. My daughter was just born. So just
Wow.
like this MSP, look, I can't stand this anymore. I did this to myself. I'm the one who opened up the pie hole, Peter. You know what I mean? I'm the one eating this stuff and not exercising. And I got myself here. I'm going to get myself out. So I spent the next 6, 7 months, lost 130 pounds, kept it off. You can't look at it as a finishing line. Same thing in business, right? It's not like you cross it and then you can kind of go back to where you were. You've got to keep those great habits and keep them going. People always ask me how I do it, like there's some secret, like there's some, silver bullet. My one word answer is always discipline, Peter. That's how I did. I got focused. I created routines. I strong willpower, etc. I wonder how discipline plays a role in your life, Peter Kujawa.
Well, it depends on what you're talking about, Joe.
You
if
tell me.
if we're talking about fitness,
Yeah,
I
anything.
think I need a little bit of that wake up call mentality as well. But no, I actually doing pretty well. I'm a Peloton addict, so
Ah,
try to work out. I
that's
travel
right.
about 70% of the time, and you
Yeah.
travel a lot too. You know the challenges that come with that, and so you're going out to a lot of dinners and a fair amount of wine, etc.
Mm,
So I at least try to make sure I wake up every morning and hit the Peloton and get a good workout in.
nice.
That helps keep me grounded and gets me refocused for the day ahead. But overall, yeah, from a discipline standpoint, I think pretty well. I've been through a bunch of experiences. I talked about the turnaround, but I've also run some relatively startup and growth based businesses, and you do what you have to do.
Mm,
You figure out what the objectives are that you need as a business or personally, and you figure out a way to get it done. It's amazing to me what I see the community do when things need to get done.
mm,
An example of that, one of the stories that I think is really undertold is I believe the MSP community saved business in not only the US, but in most of the world in the early
mm.
days of COVID. That if it wasn't for the MSP community, that I don't believe the business community would have been able to pivot
Wow.
successfully to remote work. Um, Back in March of 2020, MSPs were up against it. We were all trying to stay solvent and keep our own staff safe and transition to work from home. And yet, somehow, in the midst of that, we were able to remarkably forklift the business community all over the world to working from home
Hmm.
and doing so in a secure way, keeping them up and running. And so, our community has achieved tremendous things and will continue to. What we do every day, I think, is really under the radar for most who are outside the community, but we find a way as a community to get it done. It's one of the great things one of the reasons I enjoy being part of this community.
It is a great community. We just saw each other recently at a ConnectWise event there, secure in Orlando, and it's just great. You could just tell the MSPs are, I don't know, it's a wonderful, wonderful community. What motivates you, Peter?
That's easy, Joe. The impact that service leadership made on our business
Mm.
allowed our business to not only stay open, and I'm thoroughly convinced in hindsight, had we not discovered benchmarking, we were on the track to profitability. We had done $1 million swing over a course
Wow.
of a year, but we were still losing money. And um, if we had not discovered benchmarking when we discovered benchmarking, I'm pretty convinced that the owner would have pulled the plug on the business over the next 6 to 12 months. And so not only would the employees that we had then been out of work, but we ultimately went on to have, when I left the company, we had 85 employees. We had grown it over the years. We had hundreds of employees who had been given a start in their career. Those are all employees who were able to get married, have kids,
Mm,
put food on the table, buy houses, etc. And those opportunities wouldn't have been possible had we not turned the business around and done so through service leadership. So, what motivates me is every day getting up and having the ability to provide guidance to thousands of providers all over the world. That's going to hopefully help those businesses improve, help those owners get a higher sale price when they sell their business, help them again hire and grow, and those employees get opportunities. And to know that at service leadership, that we have the ability to influence the lives of thousands, tens of thousands of TSP employees is incredibly motivational. That's exciting. It gets you energized when you're getting on the road 4 in the morning and when you're flying all over the place and apart from your family. That's what every morning
mm.
gets you up and gets you really, really excited.
Well, we feel that, being part of the MSP community. I'm no longer an MSP, but I'm still very much involved. And, we feel that, you do a tremendous job at that, Peter, with your passion for it. And when you speak about it, you could tell you know, you're behind everything. So, given that motivation, how do you measure success?
Well, we measure it a few ways. The one is through growth of additional partners. We measure
Mm,
subscriber growth and we measure active benchmarking companies. So not only are they subscribing, but are they keeping their data updated? Are they logging in? Are they using the system? So we measure all of those things, certainly. Um, but a lot of the measurement comes from the feedback that we get from the organizations that we're subscribing. Hearing from them what we're doing in our reports made a difference for them. Data that we provided to them on compensation helped them really understand what they should be paying their people and help them recruit and retain new people. So we get a lot of that kind of feedback, and so some of it certainly is empirical feedback that we measure, but also it's anecdotal, and the mix of those two things really helps us understand if we're on the right track or we're not, where we're missing the mark.
mm. Excellent, Peter. Thank you so much for your time today. I love talking to you. I love. So, what's coming? The wage report already came out. What else do we look forward to for the rest of the year?
Yeah, so our calendar, we're obviously we benchmark every quarter, and we come out with those results about a month after the end of the quarter when we've had a chance to run all the data. So that'll be coming up at the end of July. We'll have a good sense of how Q2 went. Our profitability report, our annual report, just came out last week, so that's available for 30% off and can be purchased. Go to service-leadership.com, go up or get a hold of your ConnectWise rep. But that report is about 350 pages long.
Wow.
We're really proud of it. We're really excited about the special sections we came out with this year and added data on the correlation on profitability and customer satisfaction and some of those other sections. Um, and then the comp report that we do once a year comes out every March. So that report's available. The 2024 report can still be purchased, and the data is still recent enough that it would still be valuable. We will have the portal opening again in October. It'll open up early October and stay open until the end of November. And anybody can put their data into the comp system, whether or not you're a benchmarking client. Even you don't even have to be benchmarking to do that.
Wow.
And so if you enter your data into the comp system, when we come out with the comp report, you'll get a free copy of the next report, and
Nice.
that's the reward for supplying your compensation data. You can sign up on LinkedIn, follow Service Leadership on LinkedIn, follow ConnectWise on LinkedIn, and we'll provide visibility when the portal opens for comp data submission. But yeah, it's no rest for the wicked, Joe. We're constantly running here, and we're working on some really cool product enhancements for our benchmarking platform. And we just came out with our budgeting tool this year that helps TSPs be able to build a better budget, and they'll be able to see how they did in future quarters relative to their budget within our system. So a lot of great stuff. We're really, really excited about the support ConnectWise has given us from a development resource standpoint. We're running our platform, our benchmarking entirely on ASIO. So the capabilities we have there are really tremendous. So stay tuned. We're going to continue to come out with new stuff.
It's an exciting time. And as you said, the MSPs are in the greatest shape ever. There's great tools like this available. So cool, Peter. Anybody listening, watching, if they want to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
Best way is to reach out to service leadership. Benchmarking at service-leadership.com will come into our support team. It'll open up a ticket. And if you need to get a hold of me, that's a great way to do it. They're really good at opening a ticket and chasing me down to make
Mm.
sure that I'm actually following up, and that even when I'm traveling, I'm not losing track of the tickets. So if you email me directly, there's some degree of chance that I'll actually respond. There's a much higher degree of probability if you email our team.
And of course, you are on LinkedIn. Peter Kujawa, thank you
Yes.
so much for your time. I look forward to seeing you next event.
Yeah, Joe, always great talking to you. Enjoy it. And we'll look forward to seeing you soon.
Be well. Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pinz Disciple Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pinz Disciple Conversations.